Morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, good morning, all students of Ph.D. program in English language teaching. Okay, good morning from Buriram Rajabhat University, Thailand. Okay. Yes, and okay, good morning, the student from Myanmar. Okay, Om Tesu. The student from China. Yes. Okay, thank you very much for making your time to join this webinar. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, welcome to the webinar, okay, unlocking the reading and writing link in academic discourse. Okay. And okay, this webinar is organized by Ph.D. program in English language teaching, okay, under the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Rajabhat University. And okay, the topic today is really trendy and very interesting. Okay, unlocking the reading and writing link in academic discourse, and okay, especially for the students who are interested in reading and writing. But okay, I'm very sure that today, okay, we will gain the more knowledge. Okay, because today we have a very special inviting speaker, Dr. Willy Renandya, okay, from the National Institute of Education, Singapore. Yes. Okay, good morning ครับพี่ออนสิริอาจารย์ออนสิริ good morning นะครับ Can you hear me really clearly ครับ
ค่ะอาจารย์ค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ it's so clear
สวัสดีครับ it's clear okay thank you ครับ Okay good morning ครับอาจารย์ปัทนันครับอาจารย์ปัทนัน okay สวัสดีครับ Are you online in อุบลราชธานีครับ
Yes ค่ะ I'm in อุบลราชธานีค่ะ
Okay okay and อาจารย์ออนสิริพี่ออนสิริ is in นครราชสีมา
okay yes
okay is it hot in Korat ครับ is it hot ครับ
hot ค่ะ
hot okay okay thank you ครับ okay for the program today okay so in this webinar, okay, the first program, okay, the first activity will be a thankful message, okay, delivered by the program chair and dean, okay, of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Rajabhat University, okay, that is Associate Professor Dr. Akrapon Nanyang, okay, will be the chair, okay, to deliver a speech to welcome and thank you, okay, and thanks to the inviting speaker and all participants. And after the opening ceremony, okay, we will start the first session of the webinar, okay, by our guest speaker, okay, Dr. Willy Renandya from National Institute of Education, Singapore. Yes. And after that will be the coffee break, okay, for 10 minutes, okay, around 10, okay, 10:30. And after the coffee break will be continue the second session. And around 11 and 10, okay, will be the QA session. Yes. And after the QA session will be the closing remarks by our dean. And okay, also the PhD student or PhD student, okay, are invited to have a meeting together after this webinar as well. Because our dean, okay, Associate Professor Dr. Akrapon Nanyang, okay, I would like to talk to all PhD students today after the webinar. Okay, to ensure the smooth webinar, okay, please be prepared. Okay, please get ready. Such as, okay, for example, okay, before joining a webinar, okay, please make sure you have your computer, okay, device fully charged. And okay, before joining a webinar, make sure you have the strong internet connection and electricity. Just like in Rajabhat University, okay, today, the electricity is not, okay, doesn't work today. So the teacher and the personnel have to, okay, go outside of the university. And check audio and video setting on your computer and mobile device. Okay. And after joining the webinar, okay, please, when the speaker, okay, begin his speech, okay, his presentation, okay, please mute your microphone and to avoid side noise as well. And next, okay, all participants will be able to type the questions anytime during the webinar in the chat box at the bottom of the screen, and the invited speaker will answer them after the webinar is finished in the Q&A session. Yes. And today our guest speaker is okay, very well known. He's very, okay, famous scholar, okay, especially in English language teaching. Okay. He is Dr. Willy Renandya. Yes. He is a principal lecturer at the ELT Department, National Institute of Education, Singapore. Yes. And he has been invited to be our guest speaker many times, and okay, every time he presented his knowledge and his speech, okay, we all student Ph.D. program, we all gain more knowledge. And for the first batch, I think he presented about the research, yes, how to conduct the research and research methodology in English language teaching. Yes. And many times that he, okay, presented as the guest speaker. And today, okay, very interesting topic, unlocking the reading writing link in academic discourse. I think it's very interesting, especially for the student, okay, who would like to conduct the research on reading and writing and academic discourse. Is very interesting. And today, okay, Professor will, okay, share with us about his knowledge in reading and writing, especially in academic discourse. Okay, for the program, today we will start around 9:30. Okay, around 9:30. Our dean, okay, our dean of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, and the chair of Ph.D. in ELT, okay, Associate Professor Dr. Akrapon Memaiho, will meet, okay, our student, and he will deliver a thankful speech as the opening remarks, okay, for this webinar. Okay, and after that will be the first session. The first session of the webinar by our guest speaker, okay, Dr. Willy Renandya. And after that will be the coffee break. And after the coffee break will be the second session. Okay. I think our guest speaker, okay, Dr. Willy Renandya is here with us. Good morning, Professor.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
Just give me one
Good
second.
morning.
I'll
Yes,
turn on my video soon.
Yep. Welcome
Just
to the
give me one
webinar.
second.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, and okay, ladies and gentlemen, okay, good morning. Welcome, very warm welcome to the webinar. Okay, unlocking the reading, writing link in academic discourse, organized by Ph.D. program in English language teaching under the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Buriram Rajabhat University. Okay. My name is Siddhisak Pongpungi. I'm one of the Ph.D. students. Very great honor, okay, for me to be the host for this trendy webinar today. And today, okay, we have a very special inviting speaker, okay, Dr. Willy Renandya from the National Institute of Education, Singapore. And I'm very sure that, okay, our participants, especially PhD students, will gain more knowledge, okay, especially in reading and writing skill and in academic discourse. The first program of today's webinar, okay, it will be the welcome and thankful speech by our Dean and Program Chair of PhD in the ELT, Associate Professor Dr. Akrapon Nermaiho. I think he is now with us. Okay, good morning. Good morning, the Associate Dean Cup. Associate Professor, Assistant Professor Dr. Buriram. Good morning, Cup. Okay, now the Dean is with us, Associate Professor Dr. Akrapon. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, okay, welcome to the webinar. And on this occasion, okay, may I invite Associate Professor Dr. Akrapon Nermaiho, the Chair of PhD program in English language teaching, and the Dean of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Buriram Rajabhat University, to deliver a welcome and thankful speech to the inviting speaker, please.
สวัสดีครับ Very good morning to our friend from other countries, Ming Kalaba, to my PhD Burmese students, Ni Hao Man to my Chinese students. First of all, I would like to thank you very so much for your coming. Not just a PhD student from Buriram Rajabhat University. We also have our academic partners from different universities, both from Thailand and overseas. Thank you very so much indeed for your interest in our ELT webinar. We highly hope to have your academic collaboration in form of seminars, conference, even if the academic or research articles. So today, even if we have the webinar, the insightful talk by our invited speaker online, I think in the near future, as I talk to Dr. Willy in person, we are going to have him with us in person at Buriram Rajabhat University campus very soon. Now he already accepted my invitation. So you'll be informed again the exact date of having him with us in person at the U campus. And actually, today, my University President, Associate Professor Renandya Thopama, she would like to come and deliver a thankful message to our invited speaker. Unfortunately, she was engaged with the other crucial meeting, so she assigned me on her behalf to give a thankful message to Professor Willy. I am coming today as the Dean as well. I am the Dean of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, and also the Chair of PhD program in ELT. This program is under my faculty and Buriram Rajabhat University, Thailand. We normally have the webinar like this, and we are very honored to normally have the well-known speaker from different countries, including our speaker, English speaker today, Dr. Willy. He is very kind to our program. Wherever we inviting him, he always accepts our invitation. I would say that he is our regular professor. He gave us a very special lecture at least 3 times, I guess, for the previous years.
4 times.
But mostly, mostly online. So we highly hope to have him on site once, live, maybe by the end of this year or maybe next year. You will be informed later about this. The topic he's going to deliver to you today is very useful, I would say, particularly for my PhD student, because some of them now are in the process of writing their PhD thesis, and 2 of them, I can tell you now, are going to defend their 5-chapter dissertation in June from batch 1 and batch 2. And the other students from batch 3, they are planning to have the oral thesis examination defense, proposal, 3 chapters very soon. So I think topic that will be spoken by our English speaker today, surely very useful indeed for my students. This unlocking and the reading and writing linked in academic discourse. Not just really useful for my students, but also our academic partners from different universities, from different countries. Of course, you will be getting insightful knowledge from our English speaker today. So, by the end of my speech, on behalf of Buriram Rajabhat University, on behalf of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences and also PhD program, I would like to thank you very so much, my dear students, and also my academic partners from different universities for your coming and eagerly attending the webinar today. Last but not least, I would like to invite all of you, please join me in giving a big round of applause to express our sincere thanks to Professor Willy, our invited speaker today. Thank you. Please allow me to declare the webinar today open. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Dean and Program Chair, for your warm welcome and thankful speech. Next, our photo session. Okay, please, everyone, please turn on your camera to take a photo, please. Okay, please turn on your camera. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. And next, before we begin, okay, may I introduce, okay, the inviting speaker again, please. Yes. Our invited speaker today is Dr. Willy Renandya. He is a principal lecturer at the ELT Department, National Institute of Education, Singapore. Prior to his current position, he taught at CBO RELC Singapore, where he also served as head of the Department of Language, Education and Research. He has taught in many parts of Asia, including Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. He is a frequent speaker at language conferences in Asian region. He holds an MA in TESOL and a Ph.D. in educational psychology. His teaching and research interests include second and foreign language, pedagogy, extensive reading, language testing, and curriculum development. He has published research articles in various journals, authored an ESL textbook, and edited numerous books and anthologies. His publications include Language Teaching Methodology and Anthology of Current Practice, 2002 Cambridge University Press, Simple Powerful Strategies for Student Center, 2016 Springer International, and English language teaching today, linking theory and practice 2016, Springer International. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Dr. Willy A. Renandya, his professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. It's always good to be invited by Ajahn Ek, my good friend from Buriram, Rajabhat University, Thailand. I am very happy and excited as well to meet many of you in the audience. And in particular, I would like to welcome two of my students from Singapore. The first one is Liu Ting Ting. She's a PhD student. I think she is a year 2 or year 3 student. I think she is about to finish her doctoral study very soon. Another person also from Singapore is Huang Yan Yan. I think you can see that. I think she is into her 2nd, 3rd year as well, into her Doctor in Education program. And later throughout the presentation, I think they will be asking me a lot of questions, and I will also invite all of you to ask questions so that we can, instead of you listening to me for like 1 hour, that will be very, very tiring. I would like to invite you to interrupt me, to engage me in a conversation, in a discussion about the topic that I'll be presenting. Another person that I want to mention is my dear student, also a PhD student, but not from Singapore, but from Thailand, from Chulalongkorn University. I think her name is Ajahn Ming Sawasdipon. Ming, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, I think she is also working very hard for her PhD thesis, and hopefully she'll be able to finish maybe this year, maybe next year.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah. Okay. I think we can get started now. What I want to share with you is something that is of interest, should be of interest to most of you in the audience. I'm looking at 2 very, very important skills, reading and writing. Now, these are 2 of the most important literacy skills, if you like. The first one is reading, the other one is writing. My focus will be on both the reading and writing, but specifically on the relationship between reading and writing. And if we understand the relationship between reading and writing, I think you will be in a very, very good position to help yourself and also to help your students to eventually develop a high degree of their writing skill. Reading usually is considered easier compared to writing, and writing usually takes a lot of time for you to develop. And sometimes, or some people, writing is a skill that continues to develop over, many, many years. And throughout my presentation, I want you to think about whether and to what extent my discussion about the relationship between reading and writing is also applicable to listening and speaking. Yeah, there are 4 skills, right? Listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So what I'm discussing is actually about the relationship between reading and writing. But as you will soon find out, my discussion is also, or the things that I'll be exploring together with you, is also applicable to, when we talk about the relationship between listening and speaking. So essentially what I'm trying to say in a very brief sentence is this. Yeah, reading is a foundation for writing. If you read well, if you're a good reader, chances are very high that you'll become a good writer. In the same way, the relationship between listening and speaking is also very clear. That if you do a lot of listening and if you are able to listen very well, I think there's a very good chance that your speaking ability will also improve a great deal. So today, before I do that, this is the usual thing that I usually do before I begin my presentation. This is my university, Nanyang Technological University. As I mentioned to you earlier on, we have a range of graduate programs. at the National Institute of Education, some of which may be of relevance to you. We have a very strong English language and literature department, and 2 of my students are here, and they are doing their Ph.D. Studies and doctoral studies as well. So here are the 3 things that I want to share with you. The first one is about the relationship between reading and writing. And the second one in particular, I want to highlight, the importance of having a greater awareness in terms of why writing is difficult. It's difficult for you, it's difficult for me, it's difficult for everyone. It's difficult for non-native speakers of English. It's also difficult for native speakers of English. Some of you may be wondering, native speakers, can they write? Of course they can write. Can they do academic writing? Some can, but many are not able to do it. And that's why in most universities in the world, there's a compulsory writing course for everyone, including for native speakers of English. And usually the name of the course is Writing 101. Why 101? I think 100 is like basic foundation, and then you have 101 for the more advanced, and then Writing 102, Writing 103. And some students, native speakers, as well as non-native speakers, they have to take a number of writing courses to help them with the big assignment, course assignment, and also the writing of a thesis and dissertation. And finally, I will share with you, how we can make the relationship closer. The idea here is that how can you make use of your knowledge, of your proficiency in reading, to help you develop your writing skill. Now, these 2, reading and writing, should be linked together, should be brought closer together, so that you can make use of what you have learned from your reading to help you with your writing. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, so first off, as I mentioned earlier on to you, if at any time you have any questions, please interrupt me. I am very happy to be interrupted. And I've asked Ting Ting and also Yan Yan to, pose questions throughout my presentation.
Yeah, Dr. Willy, I do have a question.
Okay, that's good. Even before I start, she has a question. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Ting.
just now you mentioned analogous to the connection between
Yes.
reading and writing.
Yeah.
This connection also applies to listening and speaking.
Yes.
Throughout my reading, I do notice that there are much more studies on reading and writing compared to studies in listening and speaking. So I wonder,
yes,
if
it's
you
a
have
very
any
good
comments
question.
on that.
Yes, I think that's what I've been noticing throughout the years. There's a lot of research studies, there's a lot of discussions about reading and writing, but not much on listening and speaking. There are some there, some literature on listening and speaking, but not as much as reading and writing. The reason being this, the majority of, or many of the well-known people in our field are from first world countries or first language contexts like the US, Australia, New Zealand, and all that, right? Now, for these people, or for the majority of native English-speaking children, listening and speaking are things that they acquired very early on. They don't need to be taught how to speak. They don't need to be taught how to listen. Yeah, of course, some students have difficulty understanding spoken language, even in the USA, but the majority are able to speak. When they start school, they're able to speak, express themselves. They can understand instructions in the school context and so on and so forth. But it is reading and writing, literacy, that requires explicit and systematic teaching by the teachers. And many students encounter, native speakers, encounter difficulty in reading, and they encounter difficulty in writing as well. And that is one of the reasons why there's so much literature on reading and writing. Reading and writing in the first language, reading and writing in the second, and in the foreign language as well. I think that's the reason thing. Yeah, please ask me more questions later. Okay, so the first part of my presentation is about the connection between reading and writing. Yeah, I think we all know that reading and writing are connected. They are flip side basically of the same coin. Yeah, if you read something, a piece of paper, a piece of writing, then you know that there's somebody who has written, that piece of writing before you can enjoy whatever you have on that paper. So it's like flip side of the same coin. Yeah. And research is telling us something very interesting, which for many of us, we take it for granted, that if you can't read, you can write. So in other words, reading comes first, yeah? You have to know how to read in order for you to be able to write. So that is one connection, very obvious connection. The other one is this. Good writers. Are good writers good readers? What do you think? Good writers, are they good readers? I think the answer is obvious, yes. The answer should be yes. Good writers are usually good readers. But how about the other way around? Good readers. Are good readers also good writers? What is your take on this? Are good readers also good writers? If you can read, can you write well as well? Does anyone want to respond to that question? Good readers also good writers? Yes?
Agree.
Agree? Yes,
Agree.
I would also say yes, I agree that good readers are good writers. Maybe the wording can be a bit different. Good readers can be good writers. Yeah. So the answer is something like this. Yes, but not always. Now, this is something that I've been hearing a lot from teachers. The moment I say that reading is very important for writing development, and when I also say that students who read a great deal will also be good writers, there are always teachers who ask me, but my students read a lot, they can't write very well. And that is where the gap is actually. And that is where we need to help the students to see the gap between reading and writing. If reading and writing are two sides of the same coin, yeah, if you do a good job in your reading, then it should help you a great deal in your writing as well. Now, if you look at the nature of reading and writing very carefully, then you will realize that reading is a bit different from writing. Reading is about receiving, yeah? Reading is about comprehending. Reading is about appreciating, if you like. Yeah, somebody has written a piece of poem, for example. What you do is you read, you try to understand, you try to appreciate that piece of poem. Somebody has written an academic paper, for example. You try to read, you try to understand, and you try to make sense of what it is all about. And you maybe at the end of it, you say, wow, the writing is very good. I learned a lot from that piece of writing. So reading is receiving in that sense. Yeah, the more technical term that people have used is that reading primarily involves semantic processing. So your brains are busy trying to extract meaning from the text. Your brains will not be paying attention to the words, to the wording, to the forms, to the grammatical structures, to the way information is presented. Your brains are busy processing, extracting information. In other words, you are doing a lot of comprehension, understanding. And that, by the way, is our natural tendency. The natural tendency for people is to read for understanding, to read for information, to read for understanding. So semantic processing, basically. What about writing? What about writing? Now, writing is a bit tricky. Writing is creating, if you like. Writing is building. Writing is constructing. Constructing what? Constructing meaning. And how do you construct meaning? You have to know words. You have to know how the words behave in the text. You have to know that sentences will have to be linked together. You need to use grammatically correct utterances and so on and so forth. In other words, writing involves syntactic processing. Yeah, not receiving, but it's producing. A good analogy will be the differences between looking at a piece of painting, a nice painting, you look at it, you understand, you walk away, right? So that's easy comprehension, basically appreciating, understanding. Now imagine that you are drawing, you are painting, you know, a scenery or painting a building. I think a different skill is required. You need to know, you know, how to draw a house. You need to know how to draw a mountain. You need to put the right color and things like that. So writing is constructing, creating. It involves primarily syntactic processing. I'm going to ask you a very easy question. Which one is harder, reading or writing?
Writing.
Yes. Ajahn Panachanok, I remember you.
Hi, Ajahn, thank you for remembering me.
Have you finished your studies? Yes.
Yes,
You have, right?
I
Yes,
have.
recently. Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Yes, writing is harder. Okay. So the left-hand side is somebody reading and seems to be absorbed in, you know, in deep thoughts, appreciating, enjoying, you know, whatever is, you know, discussed in the book. The other one basically is more difficult. Writing requires a lot of constructing, a lot of things they have to put together in a coherent manner. And you have to use the right words, the right grammatical features, the right text organizations, and so on and so forth. Okay. Good. So that is the first one. What I have here is an example to show you that empirically, I think we can also say with confidence that writing is harder. Now, this is a typical profile of international students who are studying overseas. Before they go overseas, they have to take an IELTS test or a TOEFL test or whatever you call it, proficiency test. Yeah, if you take an IELTS test, I think you need to get an average of 7 out of 9, at least 7 out of 9. If you get higher than 7, that's good. If your score is below 7, then you are in trouble because your application may be rejected. And in IELTS tests, there are 4 components. The first one is reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Now, this is the usual profile that I've seen over the years. I've looked at the application documents of thousands and thousands of international students. This is usually what it looks like. Writing being the most difficult. The blue box there, the blue graph, is writing. And usually, even when students' IELTS score is 7.5, for example, or even 8, if the writing score it falls below 6.5, usually we will not be accepting that particular student, simply because writing is a major part of your graduate studies. Okay. We'll now explore together why writing is difficult. I mentioned early on that writing is constructing, writing is producing, writing, interpreting, making use of words and grammatical structures and text organizations and things like that. So we'll explore this notion that writing is difficult together. The first one is this. So here I'm comparing speaking and writing. Yeah, for beginning students, both are very difficult. Yeah, speaking is difficult, writing is difficult. But for you, for the more advanced level of students, speaking is easier compared to writing, although both are considered productive skills. Yeah, but writing is harder, is more difficult. Now, here is one good reason for you to consider. Yeah, from a discourse perspective, writing, speaking is usually, especially in a face-to-face, situation, speaking is context dependent, but writing is not. Writing is usually not context dependent. The audience is not in front of you. You don't know who will be reading your paper. Well, of course, in the classroom context, you know the person who will be reading your assignment is the teacher, yeah? But in most situations, when you write, the audience is not in front of you. You don't know who they are. And because of that, you need to create that context. You need to make sure that what you're writing is understood by the people who will eventually be reading your paper. In speaking, the context usually makes it clear to you, and because of that, you don't even have to say things in full sentences. Sometimes you just use, simplified or simple words to express your ideas, and sometimes you use very general words like, something like that, for example. You know what I mean, that sort of thing. These are words that cannot be used in writing because that expression is usually not understood in writing. But in speaking, I think that's understood. Number two, I think if you are writing your dissertation or your thesis now, you understand that writing is different from speaking. Writing requires that you follow certain structure, certain ways of organizing your text. If you don't follow this organization, then you are going to be in a big trouble because people will not understand you and people will be very upset if you write, your dissertation as if you're writing a short story, for example. So the structure usually is quite standard and the organization is also quite standard. The next one. In academic writing, when the audience is not very clear, you have to provide the readers with signposts, if you like, text signals. So very often you begin your paragraph by saying, or the chapter of your dissertation by saying things like, in this chapter, or this chapter is organized around 3 major headings. Heading 1 is about the purpose of the study. Heading 2, the methodology. Heading 3, about the analysis. So these are known as text signals. Yeah. In speaking, you don't usually say that. Do you do that to your husband at home? Husband, today I'm going to tell you 3 things. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. You don't do that in speaking, yeah? Except in formal speaking, then you do that. In casual conversation, usually don't provide a lot of text signals. Next, the language is different. The words that you use is different. In speech or in speaking, usually you use more general purpose words like look at, for example. But in writing, look at usually is replaced by the more formal variety like examine. The purpose of this study is to examine, to investigate. Can you continue, please? Some other verbs that people use: to explore, to examine, to investigate. What else?
Describe.
To describe and things like that. Yeah. Again, it doesn't mean that you don't know these words. You do know these words, but you don't use this very often in daily conversation or in your normal life. And that makes it difficult for you to always think about the formal and the standard variety of words, of language that is usually used in academic writing. Put up with, for example, is more often used in speaking, but not in writing, not in academic writing, not in academic discourse. Instead of put up with, you will say things like tolerate. More. Now, the sentences are usually long, complete, and long and complex as well. I think that is one of the features of academic writing. Although personally, I don't write, using complex and longer sentences, but for many people, I think that is one of the characteristics of the academic writing: complex and longer sentences. For academic discourse, again, you have to worry about the content, which is in itself is very difficult, and also the structure of the text, the way the content is presented, organized in your text. And all this makes academic writing in particular, it's a very slow, a very laborious process. It's mentally very tiring. Yeah. And because of that, you need to spend, hours and hours, writing even one paragraph. And the next day, when you look at the same paragraph, you've sort of, oh dear, why did I write what I did? Yeah, and then you rewrite the whole thing. So it's very, very tricky. Okay. So we have just looked at, the connection between reading and writing. Yes, they're connected, but good readers do not always become good writers. It's something that they have to do in order to become good writers. And then the second part, I talked to you, I shared about, some of the issues, some of the difficulties, some of the reasons why writing is difficult and usually considered more difficult than speaking. Yeah. The next part of my presentation is about how we can help our students to bridge the gap between reading and writing. Yeah, I said earlier on that reading and writing are two sides of the same coin. Yeah. If there are two sides of the same coin, if you look at one side, then the other side should become transparent to you, right? But that doesn't always happen. And this is one of the reasons why the topic that I'm presenting hopefully is useful to help you see the how you can help your students to bridge the gap between reading and writing. But first off, I'm going to share with you a learning model, a theoretical model known as the apprenticeship model of skill learning. The word skill learning here includes many things that we learn in life, learning how to ride a bicycle, learning how to swim, learning how to play tennis, learning how to drive a car, learning how to cook, learning how to become a teacher. All this can be explained to a large extent using this theoretical model. It's known as the apprenticeship model. The apprenticeship model essentially says that in order for you to learn anything, in this case, it's somebody learning to become a chef. Yeah. The left-hand side is the student, known as an apprentice. And the right-hand side is the master, or in our context, is the student and the teacher. Yeah. So what does this learning model involve? Now, here is what it is like. Any kind of skill learning how to drive a car, learning how to cook, learning how to write, for example. There are 4 stages that usually happen here. The first part is known as the modeling. You need to see a model. In the case of reading and writing, then you need to read the right kind of reading in order to help you become a good writer eventually, yeah? So the first part is modeling. Now, in this case, it is the teacher's job, it's the master's job to show the students with a lot of models. This is what, a cake looks like. This is what Tom Yam Kung looks like, yeah? There's a lot of teaching, there's a lot of modeling, there's a lot of demonstration, there's a lot of showing involved. The second part, interestingly, after the first modeling session, the student, the apprentice, is not yet ready to cook on his or her own, dish. The second part involves a lot of imitation. Imitation means copying. Yeah, trying to do exactly what the master has just shown you. So a lot of copying is happening here. Now, some of you may be thinking, is that the same as plagiarizing? A good question for you. Is that the same as plagiarizing? How is that different from plagiarizing? It's copying. Are you happy with students copying? You're not happy?
No.
Not happy.
You're not happy. Remember, we are looking at the whole process of skill acquisition. Yeah. And if you look at that process, then you have to realize and to appreciate the importance of students doing a lot of copying, a lot of imitating. Yeah. Now, if you are already advanced, most of you are already at the advanced stage. Yeah, you know how to write. Now, if you copy from somebody, that is not good because that is plagiarizing. But from a learning perspective, when students still are at the very early stage of learning, copying is perfectly okay. Yeah. So please remember that. And then the next part is for the students to do what is known as approximating. Now that's just a fancy word, meaning trialing, trial and error, basically. Yeah. So the students are doing things, trying to create things, trying to do things. And the teacher's job is to point out, to highlight, hey, there's some problems here. I think you need to fix this part. Yeah. But the bigger role is played by the student. So if you can see here, the students are increasingly playing a bigger role, but the master, the teachers are playing an increasingly smaller role in the learning process. Now, the last part is the creation part, the creating part. This is when the students try to, in the case of writing, to develop their own style of writing. Yeah, in the case of students learning how to cook, dishes, this is the time when the students create their own, signature dishes, if you like. This is the process of creating. Now, one thing I want you to appreciate is this: from modeling to creating, how long does it take? So that's a big question for you. How long does it take?
Years?
1 week? Ming, for writing, that takes years and years, yeah? But for something simple like cooking, cooking, Sichuan food, for example, Sichuan dish, Kung Pao chicken, my favorite, that doesn't take a long time. I mean, 1 day, 2 days, or maybe 1 week, I can create my own. First thing, I need to see how it's done. And then after 1 week, I can create my own style of Kung Pao chicken, which is very different from the original Sichuan Kung Pao chicken. Very different. But for writing, yeah, as you will later see, that writing is a skill that requires, a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication, a lot of practice, and a lot of teacher, a lot of hard work. Okay. Now here is a piece of advice based on what I just discussed about the model. This is from a book. Now, interestingly, the book is not very highly academic, but this is one book, a bestseller for many, many years, selling millions of copies, basically. And that is what my dream is, basically, writing a book, by millions and millions of people. Yeah. But what he writes here is very, very interesting. Look at this. Yeah, he's basically saying the same thing, using a very simple language here. Ajahn Ming, can you please read this for me?
Yes,
for us?
yes, of course. Writing is learned by imitation. If anyone asked me how I learned to write, I would say I learned by reading the men and women who were doing the kind of writing I wanted to do and trying to figure out how they did it.
Yes. It's a very simple piece of advice, but behind this piece of advice is a lot of, wisdom there, if you like. The first one, of course, is imitation, which is exactly what I said early on. You need to do a lot of copying, imitating other people. Yeah. It's not just any other people. You need to be more. Yeah. Here is a further explanation of what it said just now. If you want to write like Stephen Krashen writes extremely very well, very powerful kind of writing. Or if you want to write like me, for example, then what do you need to do? Here, you need to do you need to read a lot of their papers, their books, and all that. And the second part, you have to observe their writing styles. Observe means you have to pay attention. You need to pay deliberate attention, intentionally, paying attention to the way they start their first paragraph, the way they organize their writing, what kind of words they use to express their agreement or disagreement, for example. Now, this is where the noticing becomes very important. And then the next part is for you to start imitating. Yeah. Imitating doesn't mean that you're using the same words, but imitating means you are sort of following their model. And then you need to do a lot of practice. That's where the approximating comes into the picture. And finally, you develop your own style of writing. Let me share with you, when I was much younger, I really appreciated the writing of Jack Richards. I think he writes really, really very clearly. He doesn't do a lot of research, but he does a lot of writing. He does a lot of summarizing, synthesizing ideas from, different varieties of, sources. So initially, I would try the best I can to imitate, to copy his style of writing. But I think now I have developed my own style of writing. You just pick up one of my writing and you'll understand that that kind of writing is typical, unique of me, for example. Okay, this is the last part of my presentation. So what are some of the skills, some of the things, some of the strategies that you can learn, that you can help your students so that they can see the connection between reading and writing more clearly, so that when they read, they can make use of what they have learned from their reading, not only in terms of the content, but also in terms of the language, in terms of the way the information is presented, in terms of the kind of words that are used in the text, in terms of how the whole piece is put together nicely in a chapter, in a paragraph, and things like that. So I'm going to share with you 4 ideas here. Yeah. I hope you're not confused because I'm using the same words there. The first 2 are about reading, basically. There are 2 ways of reading. And the second part, the bottom ones, are about writing. So hopefully that will help you appreciate what I'm trying to say with you. So read like a reader. Read like a writer. Write like a reader. And then write like a writer. Let me explain what it means or what they mean. Yeah, if you are lost along the way, please just raise your hand. I'm going to say it slowly. First one is this: read like a reader. If you remember, is a semantic process. Yeah, I think that is the default processing. It doesn't matter whether you are a native speaker or non-native speaker. When you read something, your brains will be very, very busy trying to understand what the text is about. You will be trying to get into the meaning of. So that's the default processing, if you like. Yeah. So reading like a reader means you're reading for information. You're reading for the content, not for the language. You're reading for the content. You read sometimes for information. You read sometimes for enjoyment. Now, all this have nothing to do with the language, yeah? In fact, you can't actually pay attention. You can't pay too much attention to the way the content is presented. Not at the initial reading. You can't, because your brains will automatically process. And a reader It's not somebody who reads one day and then takes 1 year break, and then in year number 2, the piece of reading. No, a reader reads, basically. A reader reads as much as possible. And a reader also reads different kinds of text, a novel, academic papers, cooking recipes, and things like that, newspaper articles. Yeah. And a reader usually spends 20 to 30 minutes a day reading. You may be wondering, yeah, what are the benefits of reading? What are some of the language learning benefits of reading? Now, here you go. I've summarized here 3 major benefits of. The first one is the linguistic benefit. Yeah, if you read a great deal, if you read like a reader, doing a lot of reading on a daily basis, reading a variety of texts for information, for enjoyment, and things like that, you will enjoy major linguistic benefits. Your word knowledge increases. You know a lot more words. You may not even be aware that you know a lot of words, but as a result of you reading for content, you know a lot of words. You also know about the grammar of the language. Now, this is a different kind of grammar that I'm referring to. This is not a very specific or, what do you call explicit kind of grammar knowledge that you have. But this is known as implicit grammar. Grammar that you know works very well in the context, in this case of the English language. You will also become more aware of how knowledge, how content is presented in terms of the text structure, in terms of the introduction, in terms of the body, in terms of the conclusion, and things like that. Now, all these things are acquired, learned quite implicitly. Now, your attention is on the content, yeah? Your attention is on the meaning. Your attention is on, the information presented in the text. But at the same time, you enjoy these many benefits that sometimes you don't even know that you have these benefits. Okay? So that is the linguistic benefit. The second one is the cognitive benefits. Yeah, if you do a lot of reading, all kinds of reading, then your knowledge base increases a great deal. Now, this is very important. In order for you to be able to read academic text, you need to have a lot of knowledge. Without that knowledge in the first place, it's very difficult for you to make sense of what people are saying in their text. Yeah. If you want to know more, if you read a piece of information about a very specific things in Singapore, for example, which you may be struggling, it's not because you don't know the language, it's because you don't have sufficient information and knowledge about Singapore to make sense of the text. And knowledge is so important for comprehension. When you read, your minds actually do a lot of things. Your brains are doing a lot of things. What are some of the wonderful things that your brains are doing when you read? Ajahn Ting Ting. Ajahn means teacher. What are some of the things that your brains do? You're not even aware of this when you read. What are you doing? You're absorbing information. What else?
Yeah, I would construct a situation model according to.
Okay. Yes.
The
Anything else?
description.
Yes. Anything else?
Language processing.
Yes, yes, you are predicting, you are inferencing, you
Yes.
are summarizing in your head, you are comparing and contrasting. All these are happening as you read. And because of that, your ability to later comprehend, do comprehension exercises also become better. So reading is good for that purpose as well. Now, the thing is, again, you don't even know that you have these benefits as a result of doing a lot of reading. And finally, good readers who read a great deal on a daily basis find enjoyment. And with enjoyment, your motivation increases. Yeah. And the whole cycle repeat itself. You learn a lot from reading, from a linguistic perspective, from a content perspective, from a thinking perspective, and also from the emotional perspective. These are the benefits of reading. So again, reading is good. Now, what is the big deal about reading and how reading relates to writing? Now, here is a quote from Stephen Krashen about the connection between reading and writing, which I'm going to read to you very slowly. This is what he says. Yeah, slowly. When enough reading is done, the key word here is enough, yeah? That means daily, very, there's a lot of reading that you do. All the necessary grammatical structures and discourse rules for writing will automatically be presented to the writer in sufficient quantity. Sorry. For somebody like Krashen, reading is considered sufficient. Reading alone is sufficient for people eventually to be able to make use of what they see in their reading, grammatical structures, discourse rules, and all that they can later use for writing purposes. That's what Krashen thinks. Yeah, he is known for his comprehensible input hypothesis, for example, or optimal input hypothesis. That is what he believes in. But other people think that his theory will need to be revised a little bit, will have to be supplemented a little bit, something that I will turn to a bit later. But for now, I think what we need to appreciate is that reading is sufficient in the sense that if you read a great deal, you will have encountered, you will have seen many of the features, many of the language features, many of the grammatical features that you will need for your writing purposes later on.
Sorry, Professor.
Yes.
May I interrupt, please, because there are some questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
Okay, the first question is, how do you like writing prompts? Are they context dependent?
Writing what?
How do you like writing prompts? Are they context dependent? Yes.
I use the word context dependent in the sense that when you are writing, you don't know the audience. The audience is not in front of you. So you cannot make use of the usual contextual information that you have when you are speaking to somebody. For example, when I'm speaking to Yan Yan is one of my students here, yeah. Even before I speak, I will try to, assess her emotional state, whether she is happy, whether she is excited, by looking at her face, by looking at her facial expressions. And using that clues, then I can say things, accordingly. But that is not happening in writing. You do not have that clues in writing. If I know that Yan Yan enjoys eating, Yan Yan, what do you enjoy eating?
Yes.
Enjoy eating something, Then I can say things like, hey, Yan Yan, we should try that food again. We should try that restaurant again. That restaurant is understood by Yan Yan. Because I know her, because I have prior experiences going to that same restaurant. But in writing, you cannot do that, yeah? You have to write very clearly, Yan Yan, tomorrow, we have dinner together at 7 o'clock in this place, in this location. So you have to write everything there. And that's exactly what I mean by in writing, writing is not context dependent. You have write everything clearly in writing. Otherwise, the person will not understand you very well. But in speech, a lot of things can be left unsaid. Because everything in speaking, that sounds very strange. If you come home, Yan Yan, and you talk to your husband, husband, what would you like to eat today? Would you like a plate of and soup? You don't do it like that, yeah? You just say, okay, let's have dinner together. What's for dinner? Same as yesterday. Very easy, right? Contextually, it's very clear.
Yes.
I think you cannot do that.
Yes, Professor. Next question, please.
Yeah.
from Motaba Katami. Okay.
Yeah.
How can we read and write critically?
Okay, that comes later. Question later, yeah. So let's go back a little bit. Yeah, this is a quote from Krashen, and I like Krashen because what he says makes sense to me. Believe that he says everything, entirely, in a way that explains all the processes of language learning. But I think what he says makes a lot of sense to me. And some people have criticized him, a lot, saying that his theory, lacks empirical evidence and things like that. Some even suggest that his theory is completely wrong, which I can understand. But let me share with you a nice piece of paper that appeared, that was published recently, and was an attempt to evaluate Krashen's theory after 5 decades in existence. Now, interestingly, the conclusion, the title is very interesting, was Krashen right 40 years later. Yeah, if I understand the article correctly, I think the arguments of the 2 authors here, Karen Lichtman and Bill Van Patten, I think essentially they're saying Krashen is correct in terms of trying to understand the process of language acquisition. Now here is some non-empirical evidence. This is like evidence that I pick up from meeting real people. This girl is from Vietnam. She's a teacher, and this is what she says about the connection between reading and writing. Yeah, this is what she says. After spending a lot of time doing a lot of reading, this is what she says: reading makes reading easier. Yeah, I think that seems like an obvious statement. And the second one is also equally very interesting to me. Reading makes writing easier as well. Pay attention to the keywords here: easier, not easy, easier. In other words, reading supports reading, reading supports writing, basically. Yeah, and that has been my experience as well. Okay, the first part is read like a reader. What are some of the key points again, Ajahn Panachanok? Reading like a reader. What does it mean actually, reading like a reader? Read like a reader.
When you read, you try to learn the process of writing in there, like structure or some expressions that you like, so that you can kind of keep them for using later.
No, that's the second part. That's not what I said in the first part. Yeah. This is about read like a writer. What you just said is about reading like a writer. But reading like a reader is actually a bit different. Does anyone else want to try? Ajahn Mink?
I think from what you say, reading like a reader, it's more like reading for entertainment, to try to enjoy the reading. Yeah, to try to enjoy different genres of
Yes.
written pieces. But yeah, most importantly, you have to enjoy it to a certain extent. Yeah.
Yes. So read like a reader basically is read for content, read for information, read for meaning. That's all. Yeah. You cannot pay attention to the language. You cannot pay too much attention to the way the content is presented. So in other words, the first method is read and read and read. Read and understand, read and enjoy, read enough for you to learn something, which is very important in your studies. If you're doing your doctoral in language education, for example, and if you're focusing on listening, for example, then you read a lot of papers on the listening processes. Listen in order to build content. That's the first part. And another important part is you have to read a great deal for that. Yeah. Is that enough? The answer is no, that's not enough, because the second part about reading is this: read like a writer. This is the kind of reading that you do in order for you to remember, the language that the authors use to express their content, to present their content. So read like a writer means that I'm reading this because I want to know how the writing is done, because later I want to write something similar to that, because I of the same organization, because I want to make use of the same words that the authors use in that piece. So read like a writer. Yeah.
Excuse me, Professor, there is a questions. There are some questions, yes. How can the teachers empower students to become more independent and to boost their confidence in reading skills?
Okay. To become more confident, very easy. I think they have to read a lot of easy text. The students are not confident because they encounter difficulties most of the time. When the students encounter a lot of difficulties when they read, I think their confidence level, becomes very much lower. The confidence level drops, and they become uninterested. They become less motivated in reading, and eventually they stop reading altogether. Yeah, my advice for you is to help the students to find reading materials that are at their level, so that they build confidence in reading, in doing independent reading, and then slowly and gradually they'll be able to read more difficult text and so on. But the starting point is always reading easier materials, easier text as well. Good. Let me get back to, yes. Read like a, yeah. Now, when you read so that later you understand the writing process, so that you understand how information is presented, so that you understand how to begin your first paragraph, and so on and so forth. Then the first thing you need to do is to understand, these 4 things. Yeah. What is the purpose of that piece of writing? Who is the audience? Is the audience, are the audience researchers? Are the audience teachers? Are the audience your examiners? What is the context of the writing? And what are the language associated with this kind of writing? Now, remember, this kind of reading is not fast. This kind of reading is slow. But before you come to this, you have to read faster first. You have to read like a reader first. Yeah? And then you can stop and slow down. When you slow down, then you can pay attention to all these wonderful features that Krashen mentioned earlier on, grammatical features, discourse rules, and things like that. Yeah. When you read like a writer, you are trying to pay attention to the way a text is organized. For example, if you're looking at a piece of text known as a recount, then you can start paying attention to the major organization. The first part of the recount usually is an orientation. The middle part is usually a presentation of a sequence of events. And the last part is a conclusion. So this is the structure, which now you can pay attention. But previously, as a reader who read like a reader, you don't pay attention to this. You just pay attention to, okay, what happened? Or somebody had a big accident. That's all. Yeah, but this time around, you have to slow down a little bit, and you have to start paying attention to how the information is presented, how the information is written and presented by the authors. So the big thing is the organization. And then the second part, the small things, refer to the specific language features, where the past tense is usually used for this kind of writing. Yeah, some quoted speech usually is included. And the kind of small grammatical features like conjunctions, connectives, and things like that that are usually used in this kind of writing. Remember, this time around, you have to slow down, because what you want to do now is not understanding the text, no, because you have already understood the text, yeah? Now, this time is for you to slow down and to pay attention to the features of the text, the language features, the grammatical features of the text. I hope you're with me on that, yeah? Now, here is another example. Another piece of writing. This is the kind of academic writing, if you like, argumentative writing. Again, you have to pay attention to the structure, the way information is presented, the organization of the text, and also the smaller language features, grammatical features, technical terms, the kind of evaluative language that are useful, that are usually associated with this kind of text. In other words, what you're doing here is known as text analysis. You are analyzing the language. Why do you want to analyze the language? Not for you to take the test. Yeah, not for you to tell the teachers that, hey, now I know all these different features, but it's for you to later use these features in your own writing. Yeah, the key word here, of course, is that you cannot pay attention to every single language features or organizational features or discourse features in the text. Yeah, you can only pay attention to a small amount of the text features there. So in the classroom, when you teach this, I think the key word here is focused noticing. Do not ask your students to break the text apart and pay attention to 100 features of the text. That is not possible, yeah? Okay. Now, here is a real example of the structure of an abstract. When you read a journal article, for example, after the title of the article, then you have a short paragraph known as the abstract. Now, the abstract is actually very easy to write. But for many students, the abstract can be very, very challenging because of two things. Number one, maybe three things. Number one, they may not be very familiar with the content that they want to write about. Number two, they're not aware of the structure, what sort of things need to be mentioned in the abstract. And number three, they may not be aware of the kind of grammatical structures that are used in an abstract. Let me just give you an example. I had a graduate student, Ph.D. student, brilliant student, and she wanted to give a presentation in a conference. And before that, she had to write an abstract, right? Now the proposal, the abstract was rejected by the conference organizer. And when she showed me the abstract, I said, wow, the abstract was not very good, it's not very well written because you violated the traditional, typical structure of an abstract. Yeah. Now here is the structure of an abstract. It's a very typical structure of an abstract. You cannot be too creative when you write an abstract. You have to follow this structure. It's there. It's more or less fixed. An abstract is like a mini paper, like a mini representation of your whole dissertation or your whole research paper. Yeah. Again, in terms of language features, you cannot be too creative because researchers tend to use the same expressions, the same features, the same sentences in their abstract. Now, these are some examples that you can look at from this database, the Academic Phrase Bank from Manchester University. An abstract usually begins with, in recent years, for the past 10 decades or whatever, there has been an interest in this, but that's usually what happens, yeah? So you cannot use your own sentences, your beautiful poetic sentences to begin your abstract. Recent developments, the last 2 decades, recently researchers have shown an increased interest and things like that. Yeah, these are just additional examples. If you just read an abstract for content, for understanding, you will miss, all these grammatical features. In other words, you need to read for content first, and then you have to stop and try to see, oh, I see, that is how an abstract is. Oh, I see, that's how researchers begin the first sentence. Oh, I see that's how the researchers express the purpose of the study and things like that. Okay, I think we are ready to move on to the next part now. Like a reader. What does that mean? Write like a reader. The last two parts here is about writing, yeah? Write like a reader. Like a reader means when you write, basically you are sort of, you can't see that you are writing for an audience. So you have to put yourself as a reader. This is the idea behind audience awareness. Audience awareness. You're not writing for yourself. When you write your thesis or dissertation, for example, you're writing for an audience. Yeah. And very often your audience may not understand what you're writing. So write like a reader requires that you become more aware of the audience of your writing. You become more aware of the purpose of your writing. You should become that your first draft is always horrible. Yeah. So do not trust yourself with your first draft. Your first draft is always bad. And because of that, you need to revise, you need to rewrite, you need to submit the second draft, your third draft, until things become better and clearer for the audience. Yeah, your language is poor, there's a lot of coherence problems and things like that. Unless you put yourself, in the position of a reader, then all these things you will not be able to see. So write like a reader means writing position of a reader. So when you start writing a paragraph, for example, you have to keep asking, is my paragraph clear to me and to me only? If that is the case, then that's not a good idea. Is my paragraph clear to my audience? And sometimes you can't see that. So what often happens is that once you have finished writing one page, you have to put it aside. And then tomorrow morning, you look at it again. And then you will understand that, oops, my writing is not even clear to me. Yeah, much less to the audience later on. So again, writing essentially is revising. Yeah, I think you need to get used of this idea that writing is revising. A lot of revising is needed. So revise your first draft, revise your second draft, revise your third draft, and keep revising. And write for a real audience, in the case of you teaching your students writing, not just writing for the teacher. So essentially, again, the idea is very simple. Write like a reader means building an awareness that when you write, you're not writing for yourself. You're writing for an audience. And that requires that you become more aware of the importance of having you reading your own writing, not on the same day, but on a separate day, because on the next day you will be fresh, your mind will be fresh, and you'll be able to see things more clearly. Another thing is always good for you to show your first draft to somebody, to your classmates, to your friends, to your other teachers and all that, so that they can tell you how bad your writing is. And you should be very thankful when people say that your writing is terrible, because that is very true. Your first draft is always terrible. The last part is write like a writer. Remember, the first part is read like a reader. Yeah, a reader reads a lot. In the same way, a writer writes a lot as well. If you want to become a good writer, you need to do a lot of practice writing, approximating, and writing on a daily basis, so that eventually you become an established writer. So write daily, write a variety of text, not just your dissertation. Write a short paper, write a lesson plan, write a reflection, write anything that you find useful for different purposes and for different audiences. Emails, blogs, social media posts, poems, academic papers, short papers, papers for practice-oriented journals, and also papers for academic journals as well. this is just something to help you remember that in order for you to become a good writer, you need to write regularly, you know. Write and write and write until you become a polished writer, until you are able to write with greater clarity, with greater coherence as well. Write until you find writing enjoyable. You have become a very good writer. You write because you want to write, not because Ajahn Ek asked you to write. Yeah. So that's the bonus. If you write on a daily basis, then you will think can be an enjoyable activity for you. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the 4 ways again. I hope you remember to help you and to help your students link between reading and writing. The first one is read like a reader. 1 sentence for the first pathway is that read for meaning, read a lot. That's the first one. Yeah. Read for meaning. You cannot pay attention to the language. Yeah. And then read again, number 2. But slow down. Slow down so that you can read for language, not for content. So that you can read for you to help you pay attention to the language features, to the organization, to the presentation. And then the next one is write like a reader. Yeah, it's the ability to write in a way that is easy for your audience to understand. And finally, write like a writer is the kind of writing important for you to develop over time, and that requires a lot of practice. Yeah. Ajahn Panachanok, hopefully after you have finished writing your 500 long dissertation, you will continue writing. Otherwise, your writing will not grow.
Yes, I write every day.
Very good. I like that.
Thank you.
So you are writing like a writer, basically, yeah?
Trying to.
Yes. Here are some implications for you and also for your students. I hope this will help clarify some of the things that I said earlier on. Is not the separate reading and writing. I think you have to bring them together and highlight to the students the link, the relationship between reading and writing. Provide students with more opportunities to learn from text before they write. Basically, this is about modeling, about paying attention, about observing how the text is written. And remember this, one model text is not enough. If you want your students to write an application letter, for example, and if you show them one example application letter, and then you expect your students to be able to write a good application letter, for example, that is not good enough. Not enough modeling has been done. Remember the apprenticeship model? The modeling will have to be done repeatedly, many, many times until the students have seen the model with greater comprehension and clarity. Yeah. And secondly, modeling alone is not enough. Students will need to pay attention. And in the case of you writing your dissertation, you need to stop, slow down, and pay attention to how a piece of dissertation is written. In other words, you have to encourage students to read and to write more. This is because people learn to read and write by, Vivian, finish my sentence. People learn to read and write by reading and writing. Please say it. By reading and writing. Yeah, people learn to read and write by reading, by doing a lot of reading, by doing a lot of writing. I think that will be the conclusion of my presentation. And here are some useful resources for you. Just scan the QR code and you'll be able to download all these useful resources from my website. I will share the slides in the chat box so that you can download it. Yeah, let me do that now.
Thank you, Professor.
Okay. Back to you. I'm done with my presentation. Do you have any questions, any thoughts?
Thank you, sir.
Professor, there are some questions in the chat box.
Okay, just hold on 1 second. I am now sharing my slides in the chat box. Okay.
Yes, Professor, the first question is how to engage students in reading and writing.
Oh, that's about my whole presentation, actually. Get
Yes.
the students to do a lot of reading first. And then the next part is for the students to read again, but slow down. Slow down so that they have enough, mental space, attentional resources to pay attention to the language components of the text. That's how you engage them. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
But in the case of engaging students so that they do a lot of reading, your job as a teacher is to make sure that the students can find relevant, interesting, exciting, comprehensible reading materials for the students. Not the kind of reading that we usually do in the classroom. Very short, very difficult, uninteresting. I think that will not be engaging for the students. The same kind of writing. Do not start with writing that is so difficult. Start, by giving students the kind of writing activities that are connected to their reading. So once the students have finished reading, for example, you can invite students to just write anything about what you like or what you don't like about the book that you have just, read, for example. Yes, other questions? Yes. I would like to hear direct questions, please. Direct questions. Don't read from the
chat box. Yes, okay.
Yeah, don't read from the chat box. I want to hear you.
May I ask a question?
Yes, you can, Nanyang.
Yeah. I want to check about the reader like a reader to a reader like a writer. Is this way similar to the extensive reading to the intensive reading, or it is similar to we engage the test just from different mindsets, from a general enjoyment one to a analytical reflective way? Okay, thank you.
Yes, I think to some extent you can do that. Connecting between extensive reading. Extensive reading is basically reading for meaning, reading for content, reading for information, reading for enjoyment, reading because you want to, reading because you like it. That is extensive reading, yeah?
Yes.
That's extensive reading. Now, intensive reading should be, I said should be because the way intensive reading is done is very different in the classroom. Intensive reading is when you can, guide your students to read more carefully for language learning purposes, to get the students to pay attention to some of the most important features of a piece of text.
Okay.
But usually in intensive reading, the kind of reading lessons that we do, I think the teachers spend too much time, asking students to either analyze the grammatical features at a very deep level. I don't think that's very useful.
Agree.
Or,
thank you.
Or asking students to answer comprehension questions based on Bloom's taxonomy, for example. Yeah, I think that can be very useful, but I think I would do it differently if I had a chance to teach reading in the classroom on an intensive reading basis.
Excuse me.
Yes.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
Thank you very much, Dr. Willy. I really enjoyed your insightful presentation. Learning another language is problematic, according to Horowitz, 1996. And reading anxiety and speaking reading and writing anxieties as recognized situational skill anxiety. Students might experience those anxieties. So how we can mitigate such anxieties as English language teacher? Thank you.
Okay. Yes, very interesting question. Not actually related to my presentation, but I have an idea in terms of how we can make our classroom less stressful for the students. This question basically is about why do students feel a great deal of anxiety in the English language classroom? I think point number one is that it's the teachers. The teachers are too serious in the classroom. The teachers spend too much time teaching grammatical rules to the students, the kind of things that are so difficult for the students to acquire and to learn. So in order for you to help your students become less anxious, I think you need to find, number one, materials that are interesting, number one. Interesting not to you, but to your students, number one. Number two, the materials will have to be at the student's level. Always think about something new, something that is challenging, something that is difficult for the students to handle. I don't think that is how we learn a new language. Learning happens when the students experience a lot of happiness, when the students experience a lot of excitement, when the students find that what they read is comprehensible, they can understand it. And number three, more importantly, when the students find that the materials are interesting and relevant to their lives. I think when that happens, and when you don't frightening in the classroom, I think the students will be happier. They will become less stressed out in the classroom. So that would be my advice. I think you quoted somebody from 1996. The person was wrong. I think that person paid too much attention on anxiety.
Ajahn Willy, may I
Yes.
share something regarding that question?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, from my own experience. Actually, after teaching for a couple of years, I realized that I taught students from the teaching stance. But if I imagined myself at the age of the students, for example, I am 30-something now, but my students are only 19 years old. So when I was 19 years old, I also wanted to feel accomplished. I also wanted to enjoy my classes. I liked Thai teachers. If we can remember that from time to time, it may make it a little bit easier for you to teach the students, because then they'll not see you as a very
scary person.
Yeah, with a lot of expectations.
Yes, yes. Many of the feeling of anxiety, a lot of the feeling of anxiety that happens in the classroom is because of you, the teachers. So I think you need to relax a bit. You need to smile a bit more. You need to wear rather casual, dresses if you like. But if you look too formal, I think you will be scaring your students off. Yeah. So I think Ajahn Ming is correct. You need to make sure that you have a very good rapport. You have very good relationship with your students. Relating, being able to relate to your students is one of the most important thing in the classroom. Thanks for that. Yes, Ajahn Kit. Yes,
Dr.
Ajahn
Willy.
Kit.
Yeah,
Yes.
I do not study second language acquisition, but I wonder that you talking about noticing, and you talking about reading for meaning, reading for pleasure, for enjoyment. My question is that, like, some people reading novel and then do they pick up language pattern automatically or unawarely?
Yes, incidentally, yes. But the key thing is that if you just read one novel, you just understand the meaning, you remember the meaning, you don't remember the words, you don't remember the grammar. So it has to be done repeatedly over at least a 1-year period. Then incidentally means you don't even know that you know it. Yeah, you know a lot of these words floating in your head, you know a lot of the grammatical features floating in your head.
Right.
Now, that is the first step, kid. Yeah, the second step is that these incidental knowledge that you have may be translated into speaking skill or may be translated into writing skill, but not always. Yeah, especially for academic writing, I think you need to help the students to notice, to pay attention, to get their, attention to notice to these language features.
Right, because for myself, from my experience, before I study language, I mean, at that time I read and then I did not notice, maybe I did not really aware that I didn't noticing anything. And then when I study language, when I read passage, then I starting analyzing the pattern of the language by myself. So it's more becoming more aware. But in the past, I do not aware at all. But when I'm more aware, then I pick up the pattern or the language rule better.
Yes, very
Thank
good.
you.
That's an excellent example. That is what should happen in the classroom. But in the classroom, what happens is the reverse. The teachers start with asking the students, hey, students, pay attention to the grammar. Hey, students, pay attention to the language. I think that's a wrong approach. They have to understand first. Then a lot of the language. And then slowly and gradually, you get them to pay attention to the language features. So all these times, there's a tension between meaning and form. Meaning and form. Yeah. I think we now know better. I think research is supporting us that meaning should come first. Understanding should come first. Understanding should come first. And then gradually, we get the students to pay attention. Because what they know from the reading is incidental knowledge of the language. They know the grammar, but they can't explain it to you.
But,
so that
but
is
the
known as
word, sorry, but the word noticing is that concerning with the word like universal grammatical rule in our head.
No.
That's different thing, right?
That's a different thing. Yeah, noticing is just paying attention.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's like kid. Where do you come from? From Bangkok?
Oh,
no,
I used to listen to many lecture of you at Thammasat University.
Oh, okay.
Me too.
Okay, you're from Bangkok, are you?
Pathum Thani, yeah, Rangsit
Okay,
area,
okay,
Bangkok suburb.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question. If you drive, on the street, you see a lot of cars, right?
Yes.
You know that all these are cars, moving vehicles, right? Okay, so you can tell. Well, look at those cars. They are Japan-made cars. If you ask your wife, she won't know, whether that car is made in Japan or that car is made in China or that car is made in Germany. She probably won't know, but you probably do because you pay attention to, to those brands. Yeah, it's the same with language.
But
first,
but
you know that
things,
all these are cars.
Yeah.
Right. The same thing when the same
I
thing
have
when you
something
read.
to tell
Yes.
you. Like sometimes I drive and then I'm unconsciously turn to the path that I always drive to unconsciously, and then it's just like a habit too. Maybe language also. When you
Language is language is like
a
that.
lot, then you have the habit to say
Yes.
or speak in that way.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your answer. That's very
Yeah.
benefit to me. Thank you.
Sure, most welcome. Any other thoughts, questions from the audience?
May I
Yes.
ask one question, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. It's in your slide with regard to reading like a writer. You specified 4 main points: purposes, audience, context, and text features. I am wondering, what do you mean by context?
Yes, the context can refer to whether you're writing in a casual, for a casual context, informal context, or whether you're writing for a more formal context. Whether you're writing a poem, whether you're writing, a joke, whether you're writing a piece of article in the newspaper. So the context can be a determining factor. So essentially the first 3 parts, purpose, audience, and context, these are the social dimension, if you like.
Yes.
Yeah, writing is a social act. Communicating is a social act. Yeah, writing being a social act, then you need to understand what you're writing for. There has to be a purpose. Yeah, there has to be a reason.
Right.
And who is the audience? And what is the context? Yeah, if all these are clear, then you can express yourself, with greater confidence, with greater coherence as well, using the last one, which is the language features.
I see. Thank you, Prof.
Yes. Any other questions, please? James? I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you yet.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay, one question, Professor. Okay, I do agree according to your talk and according to my experience that there's a bridge between reading and writing. Okay, my question is, in my classroom, some students like reading. They do well and they have good grade in reading courses.
Yeah.
In opposition, some do well in writing and good grades, good achievement for writing.
Yeah.
Okay, for the good readers, some it's not always that the good readers want to write. They write reading, but they don't get ready to shift or get something from what they write to writing.
Yeah.
But for those who write well, they don't want to read, but they would like to begin writing right away in their writing assessment. So how do you deal with these problems? They like only one side, reading or writing only. Yes.
Yes. Yes. The answer to that is that people are different. That's why in the professional literature, there's a lot of discussion about individual differences, and we just need to appreciate that the students are different. Some enjoy more, learning how to speak, and some enjoy learning how to write better and how to read better. I would say leave them alone. But the key thing is they have to enjoy reading. I think that is so foundational. Writing comes later, especially when the students feel the need to write, then they will be able to make use of what they have read for their writing purposes. Yeah. Writing is not for everyone. I think we have to appreciate that writing is difficult, that even in our language, people prefer to speak, to call somebody on the phone, rather than to write a long email messages, for example, because it takes a long time to write. Yeah. So we just need to appreciate, as long as they read. The reason I keep on saying that reading is so important because reading is so foundational. Writing can wait, can come a bit later, but reading cannot wait. The same thing with listening. Their listening comprehension, we have to improve a great deal before they can speak. Well, some teachers have asked me this question. My students do a lot of listening, but their speaking is not good. What happens? That's a bit unusual. The same thing with the question about reading and writing. My students read a great deal, but their writing is terrible. I think I've learned one or two things from thinking about these questions. Number one, maybe you're listening about the wrong thing. You have to listen to the kind of text that will help you to speak that kind of text. Yeah. If you want your students to be able to give a formal presentation, then listening to stories is not going to help a great deal. They have to listen to a lot of talks, like from TED Talks, for example, when people give presentations, formal presentation, so that the link is closer between what the students listen to, presentations, and what they will be doing later, presentation. If you want your students to be a good storyteller, then they have to listen to people telling a story. Yeah. So this is the more specific connection between what they learn and what they'll be able to do. The same thing with reading. If you read a lot of stories, then your ability to write stories will become better. but your ability to write a thesis, a PhD thesis, will not improve. For you to be able to write a good dissertation or a good thesis, you need to read like 20 or maybe 30 PhD theses so that you become familiar with the content and you become familiar with the way the content is presented in the dissertation or in the thesis. It's a very simple idea, actually, the idea of transfer appropriate hypothesis. If you learn A, you'll be able to do A. If you learn B, then you'll be able to do B. It takes a long time for you to be able to transfer what, you know, if you learn A and being able to do B is going to be, you know, a long time for you to acquire. A to A, B to B. I think that would be my advice to you. Anything else?
Yes, I think that is a very clear explanation and answer from our professor. Anyone has more questions?
Yes, one last question, Crystal. Crystal, where are you from, Crystal?
Professor, I'm from China.
Oh, you're from China. Which part of China?
Southwest in Yunnan province.
Ah, Yunnan province. Yes, I've heard that the place is so beautiful there.
Thank you.
Come in. I
yeah,
should go and visit Yunnan province.
Yeah, welcome.
Yes.
Professor, thank you for your insightful lecture. You answered me, your lecture answered my a lot of questions about teaching, reading, and writing. But still, in my university context, I still have one question.
Yeah.
Because I'm teaching college English in our normal university in Yunnan province, and because we have a national test for English called Set 4 Set 6. So to a large extent, I think my teaching is my students' teaching and writing are test oriented. I think their reading is they read for answers, they write for the score. So I think there's a gap between their reading and writing. So they usually have difficulty in reading and in writing. Sometimes they practice reading, but they just understand the passage according to their vocabulary. They can get a general idea, understanding of the text, and then they answer the questions. Their main purpose is to get the right answers. So there's a disparity between writing and reading. So I want you to give me some suggestions for my teaching. Thank you.
Yes, I can tell you more if you invite me to visit Yunnan province.
Oh yeah,
I'll
my
be happy
pleasure.
to give a lecture, to give a presentation to you and your teachers and all that. I think I understand what you're saying, Crystal. I think one of the big problems with the examination culture is that the exam actually does not reflect what students, you know, will be able to do, you know, in the real world. The exam is usually, you know, lagging behind in terms of meeting the you know, the need of the students today. And the need of the students today is to be able to actually use language for communicative purposes. And that means being able to present their ideas in writing, present their ideas in speaking, and present their ideas in, you know, a variety of different ways. Yes, there's usually this mismatch between teaching and testing, teaching and examination. And very often teachers, being responsible people and being pragmatic people, I think they tend to be teaching to the test, preparing students to do well on the examinations. If they don't do that, they'll get into big trouble. They will lose their job. They will not get their promotion and things like that. So I understand the situation. I think there's no easy solution. But what I've heard happening in recent years is that China is moving away, slowly moving away from, the examination culture. And hopefully the examination will become more communicative. That what is tested is not their knowledge about the language. It's not about their ability to answer reading comprehension questions, because your ability to answer reading comprehension question is not really a good indicator of your reading proficiency. No, I did very poorly when I was a student. Well, no, I mean, I did very well in answering comprehension questions, but my reading proficiency actually was not wonderful. I have to admit that back then. But after spending time and doing a lot of practice, doing a lot of pleasure reading, I think my reading comprehension improves a great deal. So Crystal, get in touch with me and send me a ticket to Yunnan province.
Yeah, Professor. Thank you.
Dr. Willy, maybe
My pleasure.
I will accompany you to visit Crystal, because two of them, including Crystal and Vivian, both of them are my students. Now they are doing PhD at BRU. So maybe
great, wonderful, yes.
In the near future. Yes,
we can go together, definitely.
Welcome.
Okay, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think the answer and the explanation from our guest speaker, Dr. Willy Renandya, is very clear. Yes, and I think we have a lot of questions, but the time is not is limited, right? Okay, so yes, our guest speaker, okay, Dr. Willy Renandya from National University of Singapore. Okay, he has presented the reading and writing connection, why writing is so hard, and bridging the reading and writing gap. That's very insightful, yes, information. And okay, on this occasion, okay, may I invite Associate Professor Dr. Agrapon Nirmaihom, okay, the Chair of Ph.D. program in English Language Teaching, and the Dean of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, Buriram Rajabhat University, to deliver a thankful speech to our guest speaker and to all participants, please.
Thank you, Mr. MC, Assistant Professor Sitisak, who is the student of first batch, is the first batch student. Thank you for being
wonderful.
Professional MC. Dr. Willy, please be informed that now we are having 3 batches of PhD students at BRU, and now we are going to have the new batch, that is batch 4, and now there are 7 students for batch 4, 4 students from China, 5 from China, and 1 from Thailand, and another one is with us now, Smith from Cameroon. So of course, we are going to invite you again as our guest speaker to give a special lecture to the 4th batch students of my PhD program. All right, please be in front of everybody here.
Looking forward to that.
Yes, actually, Dr. Willy will be invited by us to give a special lecture on training topics to my PhD students from all batches. Thank you so much in advance, Dr. Willy, for kindly accepting our invitations to give a special lecture to the 4th batch of PhD students. And my academic partners from different universities, please be informed that our program normally have the webinar like this, but sometimes we have the workshop on site as well. And if you are available and interested in our webinar, I would recommend the next webinar that will be taking place on 18 May. And we are very honored to have Professor Jonathan from Wellington University, New Zealand.
Oh, Jonathan, yes. Very good. Yeah, it's very good.
Dr. Jonathan is coming to deliver a special talk on TB-LT, task-based language teaching on
Very important
18
topic.
May. All right, so after that, I think we are going to have maybe on the same stage, Dr. Willy and Jonathan together. So
Okay.
let's see, it will be taking place or not. So thank you indeed, my PhD student and also my academic partners from different universities from different countries, including Brunei, Philippines, Singapore, etc., for your energetic participation in this today webinar. And by the end of our webinar, I would like to again invite all of you, please join me in giving a big round of applause to express our sincere thanks to our invited speaker today, Dr. Willy from Singapore. And thank you so much once again for your coming. And take care and keep in touch. And I will see you next time. Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
And please allow me to declare our today webinar officially closed. Thank you. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you.
See you next time. Bye bye. ขอบคุณครับ สวัสดีครับ
Bye bye.